Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Director of Artist and Studio Programs here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our artist talk given today by Janathel Shaw. Janathel is a ceramic sculptor, a pencil portrait artist, and educator. She was born in Fort Pierce, Florida, and moved to Washington, D.C. as a child. She attended Duke Ellington School of the Arts High School. Later, she earned an Associate's of Arts degree from Prince George Community College, a Bachelor's of Fine Arts, and a Master's of Fine Arts from George Washington University. Jonathan Shaw is a member of Touchstone Gallery in DC, a member of the Black Artists of DC, and NCECA. She has exhibited at Northern Clay Center in Minnesota, Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, California, the Damore Museum in Springfield, Massachusetts, the McLean Project for the Arts in Virginia, Washington Sculptors Group, Joan Hisoka Gallery, WDC, the Cosmos Club, WDC, the Society for Contemporary Art in Pittsburgh, the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild in Pittsburgh, Pepco Edison Gallery in WDC, Artists and Makers Galleries, Rockville, Maryland, Baltimore Clayworks, the Jazz Museum, Kansas City, Missouri, and the Montpelier Arts Gallery, to name a few. Ms. Shaw has also been cited or published in the following: Black American Ceramic Artists, Donald Clark and Shoshani Dean, Contemporary Confrontational Ceramics, Judith Swartz, East City Arts, The Washington Post, Ceramic Review, and Ceramics Monthly. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in for our next studio tour on Tuesday, May 12th with Catherine Pond Cooper from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Jam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janathel Shaw, and thank you so much for coming to this artist talk and taking out your time for today. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my joining Baltimore Clayworks for the second time around. The first time around, I received the Lomina Salter residency, and I hope many of you may have been born at that time in 1995. I was here, and that was a year-long residency, and it was an amazing one. And I made a lot of really great pieces shortly after grad school. This is the second time around. There is a gap. So a few things I might share might be, me talking about the younger me in the process and doing a comparison, working with this. And I will say that it's wonderful to be back home, if you will, and to also be in the presence of other artists. I am a member of another studio as well, District Clay. So it's nice to be a part of the clay, environment and to be around other fellow mud lovers. So I've given you sort of an intro. What you're looking at right now are a variety of images here. So you see me standing on a little small ladder there, working on a large head. That head is no longer that size. That head is a behemoth, and I have to figure out how I'm gonna, carry it. So I'm working on a series of pieces right now, dealing with what we're dealing now in our society in terms of the squeezing or the lessening of our particular rights within America, and how it also affects people of color within the Black community and at large. The middle piece is at Touchstone Gallery. I was giving a talk to, I believe, a professor and teachers from students from Montgomery College. And in the background, you see my sculpture ode to Sandra Bland. As you know, Sandra Bland mysteriously was killed in a jail cell when she went out of town to go look for a job. And so she was found hung, and no one could find evidence of, suicide letter or anything of that sort. So we're talking about the endangerment of the Black body, and that's nothing new to American society. And the third picture, I had a chance to demonstrate with other fellow resident artists here at Baltimore Clayworks at the American Craft Council event in Baltimore Convention Center. I was a bit nervous, but when I got there, it was totally comfortable. And so I had fun working on a new piece, as you see here. It looks like a little sullen male, working with clay. And so I just want to share my love for clay and share what I'm about with my work. If we can go to the next slide. Here is visiting down memory lane. So over here in the piece, I think I'll read it. As you can see, my earlier work and current busts speak to the condition of Blacks in American culture. That has always been the thrust of my work. The first piece is a very expressive piece that was called What the Hell Would You Know About Justice? And I made that in 1995 at Baltimore Clayworks. It was part of my Salter residency. And to the right, you see Future Deferred, which is a more younger piece that I work with. And if you look at both of them, they are expressive, but they're also representative of who I was then and who I am now. I'm still fiery. I still believe in what I believe in terms of creating art that speaks to what happens within our community so that we can be seen as more humane, as part of the American landscape. When I was a younger artist, I really wanted to make things extremely expressive so you could see how I felt. I wanted you to feel how I felt at that time. And I was really passionate about it. I wasn't angry at everybody else, but I wanted to scream and say, um, on this, sort of abstracted human form with the abstract piece, what do you know about justice when all these Black bodies are, falling to the ground and we were dealing with your series of, crime and police killings and, just a variety of things. I just saw that our youth were in danger. And as a young woman, as a Black woman, as a young mother, I was scared, I was enraged, and I want that to come out in the work of art. To the right, this piece, Future Deferred, is also a piece dealing with the loss of our children. At the time that I made it, Trayvon Martin had been killed. Um, so many others have been killed senselessly. You talk about teenagers being killed because they're speaking back, but it's also about the Black body being seen as a threat. We also had another 12-year-old, I don't know why right now why I can't think of his name, who was killed playing with a toy gun at a recreational center. His mother and sister were inside, and when he was shot, the family couldn't even go to comfort him as he was laying dying on the ground. And so this piece right here is more simmering. The first one, the figure is screaming in pain. The second one, is more resolute to a certain degree. But if you look at the eyes, you can understand that the emotions are there. And then on the back, I've created the figures as if they are part of, a gravestone, if you will. And so that's why you have the death mask there. And this is something that, we as Black Americans deal with all the time. There's always a fear of our children losing the acute stage and being seen as target practice. And so I wanted to convey that in the piece. So the one to the right invites you to study it a little bit more quietly, whereas the one to the left might tap into your emotions and might want you to step back a bit. Um, so this right here is what I want to talk about in terms of my work being personal. Even if it happens to another Black body, I take it personally as a member of course, our ethnic society, but also as a mother. So I feel things. I was also an educator as well. And so when I hear about these things, I want to put them into the body of work. Let's go to the next slide. So I've shared much of this, but you can read it. As I reflect on my early work as a mature artist, I'm proud of the work that I created. And I understand the motivations of my younger self. I wanted people to hear me. I wanted them to hear me through my work. I wanted to be heard and have the public engage in meaningful, critical discussion about social change. My sculptures were direct, they were bold, they political and emotional. I made a piece of a woman giving birth to a child, and I had a noose around the neck that was dead on arrival. So a lot of my pieces were screaming through emotion, and I do realize that sometimes the audience would see it and they might, you know, be taken aback by it. But when you're young, you really want to get the work out there. And the narrative to be seen. So, of course, we're dealing with social and political issues that happen in the society with the Black body. It's happened 100 years ago. It happened when I was a kid in the 60s. It's happening now. So it's always been something recurring. When I made the work, I didn't make it to shock people, to be different, to make work to be seen. I made work that I felt. Okay, and I want to make that clear. The work was not made to be offensive. It was work that came from the heart, and I wanted people to understand how I felt. Um, but some of the work would get on the skin of some of my audience. I had the fervor and the naivete of a young artist. My work tackled race, and race wasn't to be spoken and talked about. It was a different time. I thought, and many were not quite ready for that. As a mid-career artist, if you will, as an older woman, Black woman, I continue to create pieces that explore the challenges and the dangers that still exist. And I also want to celebrate the strength and resilience of our Black community. It is now seen through the lens and layered of life experiences. So I have, matured and gone through a series of things, as you all will, as a woman. At the time that I made many of my pieces, my son was young. Since then, or currently right now, I've lost my son to an illness. And so, these things, these different layers affect you individually, and they also come out in the body of the work. I have learned to speak through my work, in terms of the visage, in terms of the imagery, in terms of the texture, and in terms of the expressions. The piece right here is Grief for Philando Castile. That was made shortly after Philando was killed. Um, you know, um, and that was a piece that touched me very deeply because I felt that Castile could have been my son. So this was a young man who worked at a school. He worked in the kitchen, you help serving this. He also donated food to a lot of children who were not able to, be there at the school. And so his the taking of his life was tragic, out of fear. The officers was afraid, and unfortunately, he shot Philando in the chest. So that was tragic. I decided to create a sculpture of an angel, and I wanted to make it a male angel. And my faces often come from friends or, colleagues, but I wanted a male angel, someone a little bit older, maybe a grandfather, to show him in the act of mourning. For those who work in ceramics, I use slab, soft slab. I also do pinch. I also do a lot of, thick layers on the piece. I may start off with soft slab and then make the piece almost solid to get the expressions. Nestled in the chest is, a mask representing Philando Castile without the glasses. And the two pillars, which you can't quite see in the slide, are of bullet shells. And so this is almost like a shrine to him. And I really began to work with mixed media with this particular piece. And so the hue of the colors on here were to represent, the breath of mourning, but also celebration and regalness, if you will. On the back are angel wings that are laying down in terms of recognizing the memorial. Next slide. This one is more recent and was exhibited at one of our In-Seeker shows. The show was created by Lydia Thompson. This right here is called Looking Beyond the Veil, that I worked with. And so our challenge, the artists who were in the show, there are about 6 of us, I believe, we were all asked to read Beloved by Toni Morrison and to take what we will from the novel and create a piece. Since many of my pieces are really dealing with nurturing and motherhood, I decided to focus on the mother in the piece. And as you can see, she's looking upward and she's communing with the spirit world, with the spiritual world. And that's why our eyes are white. And if you look at many African cultures, they wear white. And so white represents walking, communing with the gods and with the other spirits. And so she's looking upward. I have text on the piece. I have, people with their hands up in terms of supplication. And then, of course, you do see the death mask with the piece. And on the back, the mother had to make a decision when she was found by slave catchers with her children, whether or not she wanted her children to be captured and to be enslaved and to deal with the horrors of slavery. And so they were really brutal. And so she had to make a decision about whether or not she would take their lives rather than have them to endure what they had to do. And so you can imagine at that moment her looking up at the heavens and if not begging for forgiveness, making an atonement to say, this is what I have to do, and to be wrenched by that. And the body is bathed in a deep red with different layers with the piece. What I tell people, I did not realize until after I had finished sculpting the piece that I had created the base of the body like a coffin. And so that's what I mean about being intuitive and creating a work of art that speaks to you. Next slide. We've gone back to future deferred, and I want you to see it after I fired it. So you see the front, and then you see the versa, which is the back. And so I left it white because, again, it was to represent a gravestone. And so I didn't use gray. I chose white because white supposedly represents purity, but also spirituality as well. And then I rubbed the black underglazes and inks into the crackle glaze to really bring out the features of the particular piece as well. I also use sgraffito, which is drawing onto clay for those who are not working with clay, and raised surfaces to create tattoos. And so Michael Brown is on that piece. I believe Trayvon may be also on the neck as well. And then the lines in the back represent the lines on the flag, but yet they're not colored in. And so I really wanted to enhance the form, and I think I did a pretty good job with that. I will share that the figure, the face of the piece is not exact, but I had my son pose for me before he passed away. And so I wanted to get a bit of his image in there as well. He was always supportive of my pursuit of the arts. Let's next slide. This piece, or rather, I see there are two examples here of the grieving mother, which is also at the heart of many pieces that we've seen in history in terms of the Pieta in other forms. On the left was a piece that was created when I was in grad school of the mourning mother. And so I was not concerned about any kind of exacting form. This was not supposed to be realistic. What I wanted to do was create the act of mourning and grief. And so if this were a sound, you may hear wailing, a deep wailing, and I wanted to show the ugliness of it and the curvature of it with her arms within that form. I used mason stains on the piece, and so I love to scratch and to dig into the clay and the scarification of the form to get that expression. I know someone asked me in the past if she had her eye taken out. It wasn't about that. I didn't care about that. I wanted to show how hollow she felt at that particular period. Little short narrative. At the time I created the piece, it was because I'd heard about too many, killings within the city, and I imagine how the mothers felt. And my son had a gun placed in his face when he was only 8 years old. Somebody stole his bike. And so my child lost his innocence at that point in terms of dealing with that level of danger. And I was given a call at the studio. I rushed home to make sure he was okay. And so then I didn't have to empathize with my fellow sisters about that pain. I then knew that fear. And I used that to pick hues and mason stains to finish the particular form. The piece to your right, Black Pieta, is still dealing with the loss of a child, male and female, but this right here is more abstract. She's more controlled, refined, with her hair up, and she's looking forward. But if you look at her, she's determined to save the children. She's determined for others to see what's going on and to enact change. The piece is graffito drawings. On the lower right-hand side, there is a female angel holding the body of a child, much like Mary held Christ, and then her wings are sort of spread around the back. Somebody once asked me if I favored gray tones. I hadn't even thought about that. But I love to draw, I love using graphite, so maybe that has influenced how I finish my pieces. Next slide. This small piece is Angel. This is recent. It's very simple from what I usually make in terms of soft slab and the outstretched wings. This piece, unfortunately, was my way of not so much honoring, but remembering a 14-year-old that went to the school in which I taught. He was not one of my students. Unfortunately, he was caught up in the life of the streets, and he didn't have a chance to escape it. So this young man lost his life and was unfortunately killed by another youth. So there you see the piece here with, of course, the bullseye. And I often feel that our children, our men, our women, that, they are seen as targets for, this kind of violence. He has a gold mask. And I thought about the Benin culture, and I thought about other African cultures in which we have a sense of royalty, and gold is used to represent that particular group of peoples. And I just want to say that when children are born, they are precious, and they do have the potential to reaching higher heights. And so his life was just as sacred as anyone else's. Next slide. Here I have two scenes from two studio spots. To the left are current pieces that I'm working on. So you see the smaller head to the left. That's here at Baltimore Clayworks. For those who are not familiar with making busts and making thicker pieces, you can see that I've cut off the crown of the head to the right because I have a lot of carving to do. Um, you can't afford to try to fire something solid. This right here was just all thick clay. So it was just all solid clay so that I can get the expression that I really want to work with this particular piece. And it's going to be mounted on a base. And so it's in the process. To the right, for my fellow artists at District Clay is the behemoth of the head. So I have to figure out I'm going to hollow that out, but that is supposed to be about two pieces. Um, and is based on the Black church. And so I still have to finish hollowing the form out. And then I will be putting sgraffito images on the piece as well. That sucker is big, but I felt compelled to make it. I could not tell you why it kept growing, but it just kept growing with the piece. And so we will see what happens with that. So this has been a delight. It's been a bit taxing, but it's been a delight to do both. Unfortunately, it didn't quite play. I want to thank an assistant here at Baltimore Play with it, working on another feminine form. You can see I'm working with a darker grog clay. And I want to thank you all for visiting me during this time, during my talk, and just a little information about how to reach me and to see. Get a glance at what I'm doing. I am in a show at Touchstone Gallery. That's my Instagram handle, and that's my email. But I want to thank you all for coming and to listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them and ask me.